Well, welcome to this video. This is the poem Vergissmeinnict, and we're going to have a look firstly at the poet Keith Douglas. So if you've got your anthology to hand, why not grab some highlighters and follow along with this annotation. So firstly to say that Keith Douglas was a soldier in World War II this time. He was inspired by the World War I poets, and we thought about one of those poets last time in Wilfred Owen's poem Anthem for Doomed Youth. So he was inspired by some of those poets like Owen, like Sassoon, and he writes in a very kind of deliberate way. He uses some quite detached language. And we're going to see that today in the poem, and we're going to see why. Why is it sort of a very, almost in a sense, severe portrayal of war? Again, he doesn't want to glamorise war. He doesn't want to make it seem like something that's glorious or noble, and so he's very much inspired by these two poets in that sense. We thought a lot last time about the futility of war. Well, that's not really something that's seen in this poem as clearly as Anthem for Doomed Youth, but it's kind of showing a detached, almost like unsentimental approach to war. There are graphic images, and the character, who we believe to be Keith Douglas himself, telling a story about what happened to him during a conflict, one of the conflicts that he was involved in the Second World War. We kind of see it as being his own viewpoint, and he is very detached and unsentimental in the way that he describes a dead soldier that he comes across. So we need to think about that in terms of his writing style. He tells the story in a way to try to explain the complex thoughts and emotions of life on a battlefield. It's sort of, how do they cope with being in battle? How does it affect their almost like emotional well-being? So this is a first-hand account that he's giving, as we've said already. Pronouns used: me, we, and so we can obviously assume that he's with his troop, he's with his regiment, and they are, in the story, as we can see in the poem, they're going to go over and explore previously captured land. So they've been in already, they've captured the land from the enemy, I guess in France, and they are going back to this land, and in this place, this battleground, which is described as nightmare ground, they find this dead soldier. We are to assume a dead German soldier, because the person was previously attacking them. And so we have this first-hand account of this moment, and in it he explores what it is like to be a killer and survivor of a battle. It would be a very strange experience to go back to a place where you'd killed somebody and explore and see the body of the person who was killed in that conflict. We're not told whether Keith Douglas killed this man himself, but it's assumed that there was an altercation between the two forces, and that as a result this German soldier was killed. So it's set in the Second World War. That's very important context for this poem, and Keith Douglas giving us this first-hand account. Well, let's go up to the title of the poem because it's a really sort of strange title for us if we are English speakers. Vergissmeinnict, and it's, you know, practice saying it a little bit to yourself. It's a German word, and this is, you might know already, this is what it means. It means forget-me-not, I believe, in German. So already, and I want you to see this throughout this poem, there is, and this is the key word to remember, there's an almost mingling of two concepts all the way through this poem. So straight up to this conflict section here, there's a conflict of emotion, while Douglas tries to keep his emotions in check and create this very detached and sentimental tone, sometimes that kind of unravels. So there's a conflict of emotion for the soldier. There's also a conflict in humanity. What do I mean by conflict in humanity? Well, the enemy soldier who is killed is a killer himself by very nature of the fact that he's signed up to the war and he's fighting in this brutal conflict. But he doesn't always fight. He has a girlfriend back home in Germany who has given him this photograph of herself. And this is where they find this word. It comes from the poem, and it's written on a photograph of the enemy soldier's girlfriend. And that happens in the poem. This is a word that's taken from the poem. So they find the enemy soldier lying there. He's dead. He's been dead for weeks. And they find on him a picture of his girlfriend. And so they begin to think, well, he wasn't always a killer. He was a lover as well. And so there are these conflicts that exist within this man and in all of humanity. How these two things can exist side by side is something that's really interesting to Douglas. So there's obviously conflict about World War II, and there's details in there as well, a few little details that we can see. So it's obviously about sort of physical altercations and a battle. So three little forms of conflict there for us to get our heads around, and I really want you to be thinking about this idea all the way through this poem, that there is a conflict in humanity that Douglas is trying to bring out. The form of the poem then, it's kind of in free verse. Free verse obviously meaning a poem that doesn't have a regular rhyme scheme or no rhyme scheme. Well, this poem does rhyme, but it's not predictable, it's not consistent. And that's important as well. It kind of signifies the changing nature of war. It's not easy and simple and straightforward. If this poem, this brutal, hard-hitting, direct, graphic poem would have been in a happy, skipping along, joyful, rhyming style of poetry, it wouldn't have sounded quite right. And so I think when we read it, you'll see that the free verse, the rhyme and the para-rhyme, it doesn't always rhyme, is going to be really important here to think of when we think about what this poem actually means to us. Okay, so para-rhyme is a good word to write down. So let's get into the poem and have a little read through. I'm going to explain the story as we go. We've already thought about some of the elements, so let's hear it for the first time in full. Vergissmeinnict. 3 weeks gone, and the combatants gone, returning over the nightmare ground, we found the place again and found the soldier sprawling in the sun, the frowning barrel of his gun overshadowing. As we came on that day, he hit my tank with one like the entry of a demon. Look, here in the gun pit spoil, the dishonoured picture of his girl who has put Steffi, Vergissmeinnict, in copybook Gothic script. We see him almost with content, abased and seeming to have paid and mocked at by his own equipment that's hard and good when he's decayed, that she would weep to see the day, how on his skin the swart flies move, the dust upon the paper eye, and the burst stomach like a cave. For here the lover and the killer are mingled, who had one body and one heart, and death, who had done the soldier singled, had done the lover mortal hurt. So in the poem we can see firstly that it's taken place after a battle. Okay, so we've got this time period here, this time reference. And already it seems to be building this detached tone, 3 weeks gone. This monosyllabic opening 3 words. Building that unsentimental tone that we just see all the way through this poem. I'm probably going to write that word unsentimental and detached a lot of times today. And the combatants gone. Okay, so all those soldiers have gone, returning over the nightmare ground. So this idea maybe that they've had this hellish battle in no man's land. And we've got this metaphor maybe for the ground that they've had. It's a nightmare, and again it kind of doesn't really match up with the 3 weeks gone detached unsentimental tone, the nightmare ground. So again maybe we can see the spilling out of emotion from Douglas. Remember what we said at the top, there is going to be a conflict of emotion in this poem. We found the place again and found the soldier sprawling in the sun. So they found this man. He's dead already. He's been dead for 3 weeks. Nobody has buried him. He is just rotting away out in the open. But what is not rotting away is his gun. His gun is completely intact, and that gun is almost frowning at the soldier. Maybe the personification here is signalling some kind of, I don't know, displeasure maybe about how the soldier has died. Maybe this is even more disconcerting to me, that the gun you hold doesn't rot away, but you do when you've died. And the gun is frowning at the man. Maybe he didn't use it well or something like that. But there's a real sense there that the gun is more alive than the man himself. As we came on that day, he hit my tank with 1. So we've gone back in time here to when he remembers that altercation with this enemy troop. So he hit my tank with 1 like the entry of a demon. And again, linking to this hellish semantic field. Here we can see nightmare. We can see demon building up this hellish semantic field. And then we've got this command word, this imperative verb, look. Here in the gun pit spoiler, dishonoured picture, this is where they spot Steffi, the girlfriend. It's worth putting that, because otherwise you might forget later when you come back to revise this poem. And this is what she has written at the bottom. She's put this, Steffi, and she's saying to him, forget me not. And this is how, her handwriting looks to them. And again, they're looking at him and they've got this contentment about them because they've won and he's lost. So again, emotionless, completely detached, unsympathetic, because he's being mocked at by his own equipment. Again, this personifying the weapons. The weapons are more alive than the soldiers are. Just like in the Wilfred Owen poem that we looked at last time. That's a lovely inspired technique that's coming out there that you can really pick out as being Owen's technique. That's hard and good when he's decayed. But she would weep to see the day, okay, we're getting a little bit of emotion here, maybe a little bit of compassion from Douglas, because he's thinking now about the effects of battle and, you know, the far-reaching effects of battle, how that it's not just on the battlefield that it affects people back home as well. She maybe doesn't know that he's dead, maybe she's had word after 3 weeks, who knows, but she definitely won't have come to this ground and seen her boyfriend or husband killed, dead, decaying, rotting. She would weep to see him today, because the skin, on his skin, the flies are moving around, you know, decomposing this body. The eye, it looks like paper because it's decaying, and this is what happens to somebody, perhaps when they die, that maybe it's been wounded, maybe this is an injury, but it's also what happens when your body swells up and isn't drained properly when you're dead. So he's obviously just been left there just to rot away, hasn't been taken away by his troop. And then this is the part of the poem where it's very reflective, where Douglas has this clever moment where he sees that there are two sides to everybody. Although he had one body and one heart, there were two very separate sides to him. And death, because it singled the soldier out, has killed the lover as well as the killer. Does that make sense? And so we've got this antithesis of humanity. Again, thinking about that conflict of humanity, that there's a lover and a killer, maybe in everyone. We've got this antithesis linking these two ideas together. Well, we've had a look at some of the language features, but I think as we've read this poem, there's a lot of complex things going on here, but I just want to look at some of the words and the rhyming words and the repetition and things like that that's going on in this poem. It brings out a really brutal tone, I think, to start it off. 3 weeks gone and the combatant's gone. It's a very kind of driven rhythm, but it helps with these repeated words as well. Over the nightmare ground we found the place again, and found the soldier sprawling out in the sun. Found and found. Now you could be listening to this thinking, well, that's just an accident. He just didn't know a different word to say for the word found, so he just said the word found again. Poets never do things like that by accident. We've got these repeated words, and it sounds like it makes it sound to me like quite a brutal tone. It makes it also sound like he's drilling, he sounds like he's almost making this point that he's found the place and he's found the soldier. The soldier and the place are sort of like, linked together. So he's drilling this idea of nature taking over the soldier's body. And again, that's really helping us to see that unsentimental tone. They found the place, there it is. Oh yeah, look, there's that guy as well. Found the soldier sprawling in the sun. And just looking at the way this para rhyme and the sort of irregular rhyme scheme is working here. It's really helping us to see the disjointed nature of war, because we've got sun here rhyming with gun on the next stanza. So we've got split stanza rhyme. And again, this isn't done by accident. This is almost to show chaos. It's almost to show the chaotic nature, the disjointed nature of war. How that one thing spills into the other. Sorry, let me just put that over there. It's one thing spilling into the other, just like the stanzas seem to spill into each other. So that happens in war as well. And remember, that is the whole point of this. poem, there's conflict in humanity. People aren't just one thing, people are many things. And here, two things in particular. As we came on that day, he hit my tank with one, like the entry of the demon. Look at this, one on, one mon, like that. So we've got this power rhyme. Things sort of half rhyme. Things are not perfectly rhyming, okay? So that again is creating that jarring effect. It doesn't sound quite right, and we cannot quite predict what the rhyme scheme is going to be, and that's exactly Douglas's point here. This is an interesting part here. Look, here in the gumpit soil. This stands out immediately. So I mentioned before we've got this imperative verb here, which seems to reflect this maybe like a command that the soldiers are given. Look, here in the gumpit spoil, the dishonoured picture of his girl. And again, spoil and girl don't quite rhyme. They have this jarring effect because they don't quite sound like they go together. Just like the character, who is a lover and a killer, they don't quite go together. It's unpredictable. So maybe we could think that this is a command from an officer, one of his superiors maybe. And again, we've got this very short, blunt sentence that stands out here. This full stop midway through the line, technique there is caesura. It makes your ears sort of prick up, because you're listening to a poem, you get into the flow of the poem, and then suddenly there's a break midline and you're thinking like something's happened that is surprising here. And strange that they find this part where they find the picture of Steffi. This is the most surprising part that the soldiers find about the poem. They find the place, they find the soldier, that's all happening pretty straightforwardly at the start here. Oh look, there's his gun. I remember when we had this altercation. But look, here in the gumpit spoil, the dishonoured picture of his girl, who has put Steffi, Vergissmeinnict, in a copybook Gothic script. And this is the focus of the whole poem. Remember, this is the title of the poem as well. So it's strange that they find this picture the most shocking thing about it. We see him almost with contempt, abased and seeming to have paid and mocked at by his own equipment that's hard and good when he's decayed. I think we could see this word here. We see him almost with contempt as a double entendre. There's a double meaning here. Really, really beautifully created by Douglas, because are they looking at him with contempt? So is it the Allied forces looking in almost sort of like mocking him? Are they making the point that they have looking at him with contempt? Is it this? Is that the tone here, that they've got contempt for him? Or are they saying that he is content now that he is dead? So there is two ways to read that. Is the soldier happy now that he's resting, in the afterlife? I don't really know what he's trying to say there, but I think that it's deliberately ambiguous. We've got this ambiguity. Again, linking to that idea that there are two strands to this poem. Mocked at by his own equipment, again the personified gun, representing the fact that the weapons are more alive. And we can link this here to Owen's methods. I think that's a clear comparison. But she would weep to see today how on his skin the swart flies move. That lovely sibilance going on. Flies, skin, swart, flies, move. Again, we're bringing in that sinister, tone with the sibilance here. But we are also thinking maybe like it could link to this idea of contentment, the skin, the swart flies move. It maybe makes you feel maybe slightly relaxed, I don't know, like the body is relaxing, resting in the sun, that soothing S sound. Is it soothing, or is it supposed to again reinforce the nightmarish ground, the demon, the hellish imagery? Who knows? The dust upon the paper eye, lovely metaphor there. Everything is just decaying and falling apart. And the burst stomach like a cave. I think if there's one key line in this, I really like that line, burst stomach like a cave. It just is so emotionless and detached. It's perfect for what we're trying to say. You know, if you were to see this, I think you would be more shocked. But it's almost like war has hardened him. He seems to be distracted by the different physical things around him. The equipment, that means the guns and the other things, the artillery that's around this that awful scene here. He's distracted by things like that. The picture, he's distracted by the picture. He's distracted by the physical appearance, the burst stomach. And it causes him to reflect on the person. So we've got this very reflective tone at the end here when we look at the person, but we haven't, we've reached the end of the poem. We haven't got time to think about who this person might have been, like Thomas Hardy does, where he thinks like, if I'd have met this person in a bar, this is probably what he would have been like, this is probably why he joined up with the war. He doesn't go into that at all. He's just thinking about the physical aspects of this man, and we've reached the end of the poem, so it's too late for him to start thinking about those things. All he can think of is the dual nature of man. So this is a key theme, again, conflict in humanity between the soldier, the lover, and the killer. This hendiadys here, okay, so we can say it's antithesis, but it's also hendiadys, linking, it's two words linked together with the word and. It seems to make the link so simple. It's putting two very complex ideas next to each other and just connecting them with the word and actually it works brilliantly. The simplicity here works perfectly because we get it. We really do understand what he's talking about at the bottom. They're mingled. Again, that verb there, meaning to combine two things, but mingled. Why doesn't he say, for here the lover and the killer are combined? Well, okay, he's setting it up to rhyme with this word singled, and we've got possibly a very clear rhyme here between this mingled and singled. A clear sort of coherent rhyme, but then it really jars when these words are not quite rhyming. Heart and hurt. Who had one body and one heart, and death who had the soldier singled, has done the lover mortal hurt. But it kind of connects the point there, doesn't it? It connects these two things by trying to piece them together in a rhyme, but we've got this half rhyme that again has that effect of jarring heart and hurt together. So just to go down to the bottom of the page here, where I keep a little log of things like tone and messages. Well, the tone is a really easy one here for me. I think we've got this unsentimental tone throughout. It's almost like apathy. He's almost, you know, they kind of, oh, there's the soldier, yeah, there he is. Oh, look, his gun's there, he's got a picture there as well. It's almost apathetic. Sometimes it does spill out into emotion, short bursts of emotion, but it's not directed towards the man himself. It's more directed to the memory of the nightmare ground and the weapons that were used like a demon. So we do have short bursts of emotion, but only really linked to the conflict. We've got a very detached tone, and in the end I think we've got some reflection. We've got a little reflective tone by the way he looks at life and the conflict in humanity itself. So, what are the messages of this poem? Well, I think, you know, we could take some words from Jekyll and Hyde here. Man is two. There are two sides to humanity. It's not just simple, straightforward. Also that, you know, conflict is brutal. There is a huge amount here of just the sheer brutality and violence of war, with the gruesome imageries, you know, like the burst stomach like a cave. It's really bringing into bear that brutality. What else can we say about the messages? Perhaps that there's this sort of you know, knock-on effect really of a battle, so that a battle has an effect on loved ones, and everyone is connected to someone back home. So everyone is connected to domestic life. You know, it's not just, you don't just exist in this battle and that's your whole life. You've got someone waiting for you back home that says to you when you go off to battle, don't forget about me. Make sure you don't forget about me. And so that's the poem Vergissmeinnict. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've made some good notes in your anthologies.